This is the perfect volume, Anna.
Great. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy solstice. Hi, Melvine. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Leanne. We are listening to George Helms singing Ku'upua I Pauakalani, which is about a garden. Seemed appropriate. Hi, Rufino.
Ah, aloha.
We'll give it another couple minutes and as people filter in. If you haven't had the chance yet, you can change your Zoom name to your name if you want your organization and pronouns. We have a lot of speakers today, so we'll probably do a brief version of introductions. So having that info in your Zoom name is nice. Hi, Sebastian. I see some new faces. That's awesome. Hello, welcome. I guess I should say I see new names. All right. This is about the number I was expecting for attendance. Hi, Ati. So we'll go ahead and get started.
Morning, all.
So for those who haven't attended the Hui Māla convenings yet, we do record them and put them on our website so that those who aren't able to make this time can still participate asynchronously. I also wanted to just mention this Ololonoyao on the screen, Ka la I ka Mauliola, which means or refers to Mauliola, the breath of life, and the god of health, and it reminds us how important the sun is and to our lives and our well-being and to gardening and to growing food. And today is the summer solstice, so it felt particularly apt. So today we'll do introductions in the chat just to save time. We'll get to that in a minute. Then we'll have a presentation from Claire about Keep Cool Oahu and generally about resources available for anyone across the state for being prepared for the heat. Then we'll have a presentation from Melvine about the Climate Change and Health Working Group and heat-related illness. So excited to have you here. Thanks for being here. And then we'll have time at the end for member updates. I'm highlighting the 50th anniversary of the City and County's Community Gardening Program because we have Leanne here who can talk about that. And then we'll open the floor to others who want to share. Then closing and any final announcements. Okay, so like I mentioned, please change your Zoom name to your org and your pronouns. And then in the chat, you can also introduce yourself. And I thought I would have um, maybe an additional activity to share your favorite summer activity. You have one. And then I also just wanted to have the photos of each of our in-person convenings so far since we've become statewide Hui Māla. And there's two blank pictures there because, of course, we keep going forward and meeting in person when we can. Not next month, but probably in August, we'll do an in-person convening. So keep an eye out for that email. Let's type in the chat our introductions. Leanne is here. Thank you, Leanne. Hi, Dan. Favorite summer activity? Nothing special, but you like the mellowness of this meeting. I'm glad you like that. Pretty chill today. Too many people to go around the room and introduce every single person, unfortunately, especially because we have some good presentations coming up. Favorite summer activity, swimming in the beach or at the pool. Awesome. Sailing, that's awesome. Well, keep putting the stuff in the chat. We get to know one another. And we'll start with Claire and speaking to Keep Cool Oahu. Would you like to share your screen?
Yes, I would.
Okay, making you co-host.
Awesome.
And then I stopped sharing. There.
All right, awesome. Well, it's great to meet you all and see some of your familiar faces again. My name is Claire Rossi de Leon. I am a climate adaptation specialist working with the City and County of Honolulu's Resilience Office. So the whole office name is the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And our office was created in 2016 by a charter amendment that was approved by Oahu voters. So we're a relatively new office, but what we're tasked with is supporting the city to become more resilient in the face of climate change. So some of our projects are internally focused, looking at processes within the city. And then other of our projects are externally focused, so helping our residents, things like that. So one of the projects that I wanted to share about today was called Keep Cool Oahu. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I figured since we have a beautiful new webpage, I would just show you the webpage and take you through that instead of making a presentation. So that's how we'll do that today. So to access this webpage, it's publicly accessible. It'll be resilientoahu.org/keepcooloahu. So you can see that at the top here. Yeah, let's get started. So Keep Cool Oahu is a project that our office has been working on for about 3 years now. And it included a heat assessment and analysis for Oahu. So kind of just looking at heat as a risk on Oahu. And then the development of a public service campaign, which you'll see kind of embedded into this website. So let's talk about heat a little bit more, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page about understanding the risk. So is heat a concern for Oahu? We think yes. The average number of hot and humid days has more than doubled in the past 10 years. And this is due to climate change and is still increasing. So you may have already noticed it can be more difficult to get around if you take the bus, harder for students to focus in school, a bigger problem to not have air conditioning, and just generally less pleasant to be outside. I know with my family growing up, we never had air conditioning. And last year, my parents had to install AC after, 20 years of not needing it. So definitely it's getting hotter. A concept that I wanted to share was called the heat index. Is anyone familiar with heat index? Okay, some of you kind of. All right, so what heat index is, it's basically what the temperature feels like to your body when you combine humidity with the air temperature. And so over here is the National Weather Service heat index. So this chart basically combines the humidity and the temperature. So we have the humidity over here and the temperature on the top. So for example, if the temperature was 90 degrees, and the humidity was, 70 degrees, then the temperature, it's really feeling like it's 105 degrees. So this is like a really good chart to refer to when you're going to work outside of, because it's not just temperature, right? The humidity really affects how your body actually functions. So it hinders high humidity, it hinders your body's natural cooling process of sweating. So it can make moderate temperatures feel even hotter. So a project that our office did in 2019 is we went around on a big heat mapping campaign that you can kind of see here. It's a little bit small, but you can check it out more on your own time. And you can see that afternoon heat indexes on Oahu, they reached the highest one recorded was 107.3. So that is really hot. And typically when we're looking at like the heat index, anything above 90 is when you start to get a little bit worried about, having symptoms of heat illness, things like that. And obviously, the threshold of 90 is going to depend on a couple different things, including your demographic. So everyone is vulnerable to heat and health risks, but some groups are a lot more vulnerable than others. And you can kind of see them listed on the bottom. So some groups that we should be watching out for are keiki or kupuna, pregnant people, unsheltered folks, people with any sort of health conditions, but especially those related to the heart, any sort of outdoor workers, and then also our pets. A lot of our pets are really furry. They get hot too, and that's definitely something to think about as well. So that's definitely a key message of people respond to heat differently, and it's good to check in on people if they fall into any of these categories. Or if you yourself fall into one of these categories, it's a good kind of reminder to yourself that I might be more at risk. I need to, make sure that I know the signs of heat illness and I know how to respond. And I'll be talking about those a little bit more in depth in a minute. So kind of getting back to the climate change side of things. So is it getting hotter? Yes, temperatures in Honolulu have already increased by 2.6 degrees since 1950. So this means that we're already experiencing more days that can pose a risk to vulnerable populations and increase heat-related illness. And then your next question is probably how hot is it projected to get? So by 2100, Oahu is projected to experience temperatures that are between 1.8 to 7.2 degrees warmer. That probably seems like a really big difference, right? 1.8, okay, that's fine. 7.2 degrees hotter, that's a really, really big difference. So we included this graphic from the National Climate Assessment that basically explains it. So the orange line is the observed temperature change over time. So you can kind of see this steady increase. I think to 2020 this was made. And then based on our emissions, we'll have to kind of see how it goes, right? So that's the other part of our office's work is trying to reduce our emissions as a state to try to keep it into this lower emissions category. All right. Maybe I'll pause here for a minute and see if there's any questions before I continue on.
Hey Claire, it's Dan. Great overview.
Hi.
And I always start like I'm not an arborist, I'm not a scientist, but recently, and I'll just drop it into the chat. I was talking with someone because I was familiar with the heat index, and he was like, "Heat index, that's not good enough. It's the wet bulb temperature." And so I just threw in the chat the
Yeah.
wet bulb temperature as a more refined measurement of, how it feels. And unfortunately, I think this was written by AI, but anyway, so I can't vouch for its
Yeah.
accuracy. But I did want to ask you, like, what do you think of that? And then for the group as a whole, you know, I haven't put effort into it, but if you recall, maybe 20 years ago, nobody used to call be aware of the UV index. Now people are like, oh, UV danger, red. And I just think that we really need to get people, mass media, social media, everyone else to be thinking not today's temperature, but how does today feel? And that's going to be a useful way to build awareness about heat, that it's not just the temperature, it's this combination, whether you use a heat index or the wet bulb, of that humidity and heat. And then the final question for you, Claire, that sure, Hawaii's projected to get hotter. What is Hawaii's humidity going to be like in 2100? Because that's a key consideration. Are we going to be more like Guam than, a temp kind of the tropics that we are today in terms of humidity? So lots in there to unpack, but
Yeah.
you take it
Great.
wherever you want.
Great questions, Dan. Thank you. So for the wet bulb globe temperature, that is definitely the highest standard of looking at heat and humidity and what it feels like. So definitely recommend that, especially for example, athletes where you'll be playing outside and in the full sun, because that measurement, I believe it takes into account the amount of sun on the thermometer as well. Whereas the heat index is pretty simple. It's literally, I mean, I showed you guys this. It's just you take the temperature and you take the humidity, and this is what you get. The reason that our office uses the heat index is we think it's a bit more simple for people to grasp the correlation, and that also some of our historic work has used the heat index in some of our like mapping exercises. But yeah, totally agree. The wet bulb globe temperature is the highest standard. And then in terms of humidity projections, that's really interesting. I haven't seen, or I'm not aware of anything related to humidity projections, but there have been a couple studies that have been seeing like a decreasing trend in our trade winds. So with decreasing trade winds, that's, obviously going to add to how hot it feels as well. However, those studies were done a while ago, and I'm not entirely sure about how well they've been validated. So I'd recommend kind of looking into the study yourself, since I think it was just one study that found that. Any other questions while I'm paused here? All right. So Daniel, enjoy this part. So let's talk about cooling our island. What I know I've talked about some heavy things, but I think it's really important to stay optimistic about what we can do. So I wanted to introduce the concept of the urban heat island effect. So urban areas in any city, but even in Oahu, are hotter due to something called the urban heat island effect. So this is a phenomenon where cities experience higher temperatures than surrounding rural areas because of, the materials that we use in our cities. So dark, impermeable materials like concrete and asphalt. So the built environment around you plays a really big role in the temperatures that you feel. Even though you might be 5 or 10 miles away from another person, if they're in a green, shady park, and you're standing in the middle of Ala Moana, you're going to feel significantly hotter. So some cooling strategies are planting trees, removing pavement, creating green roofs, and then also using reflective surfaces like cool paving and cool roofs. So this is an idea that our office has kind of begun to play around with, and we have created a story map to kind of explain another project that we've been working on. So we recently finished a digital modeling study. So if you're interested in geospatial analysis or anything GIS related, I highly recommend that you check out this story map. And basically it looks at the questions of how does land cover affect local temperatures? And then it also plays with the ideas of how would various cooling solutions affect temperature? So if we increased our tree canopy to 50%, how would that affect our temperatures? So kind of, you know, an interesting thought process and something that we can use in policy recommendations or anything like that. Just it's a great modeling study. So if you have that sort of brain and are interested in that, highly recommend that you check out this story map, kind of dive into the data a little bit. All right, and then a little bit more about the city and county of Honolulu's responsibility to heat. So I work on the climate adaptation team within our office. And basically our entire job is to implement climate ready Oahu. So this is the city and county of Honolulu's climate adaptation strategy. And it includes actions like Action 1.1, develop and distribute materials about climate hazards, their impacts, and how individuals can take action. We have an entire strategy related to heat, which includes updating the city's street and park tree inventory, establishing shade quotas, assessing risk to community health, increasing availability of public drinking fountains, which is much more difficult than you would expect it to be. So these are just, you know, some of the actions in the strategy that our office is starting to push forward. And this document, Climate Ready Oahu, was adopted about a year ago now. So we're really starting to get into the implementation now. Okay, so finally, this is the kind of the last part of my presentation. But through all of our work, we've developed a whole bunch of outreach materials. These are all free for you to use and distribute. And the download links are right below this. So we have a flyer about is heat a concern, talking about who's at risk. We have a general heat brochure, which includes heat safety tips, in addition to learning the signs of heat illness. We have a flyer about cost-effective ways to cool your home. We have a flyer about, you know, how to respond to the signs of heat illness. And then we have some population-specific flyers about pregnancy and heat, about workers in heat, if you're an outdoor worker or maybe an indoor worker somewhere without air conditioning. And then my favorite is our shishi chart. So are you drinking enough water? If your shishi looks like coffee, that's not a great sign. So this is awesome, especially for keiki. We've done some outreach with this, and it's surprising the number of keiki who've never really like looked at their shishi or what it looks like and what it can tell you about how your body's doing. So these are great if you want to put them up in bathroom stalls or things like that. We also have our kupuna brochure, and then we have a flyer about a general guide for planting trees if you want to plant one near your house, how much space you need, things like that. And then finally, so you can download all of our outreach materials here. You just click one of these buttons, and we have all of the English materials, and then we have them translated into 4 other languages as well. So yeah, if you would like any hard copies, you can feel free to contact me. My email is right on this website right here. So yeah, I'm happy to provide copies if you have an organization, if you want a flyer to put up at your community garden or an area that you work, happy to provide that. I'll stop here again. Yes, perfect. Leanne has a question.
Yeah, hi. I have an interest in green roofs. I've seen it implemented in Vancouver and some other cities, and was wondering if the city and county is moving in that direction. I can understand it would take a lot of governmental implementation, probably involving building codes and design and so forth. But, you know, could that be another tool in the toolbox?
Yes, it definitely should be a tool in the toolbox and is something that our office is interested in. I think a way that it could be implemented is adding it into building codes. You know, there's been, I believe that in the most recent update, they've added in a certain like reflectivity of materials, either of paint or of roof shingles to reflect heat radiation back to the environment rather than holding it in. So I know that's in there. I'm not personally familiar with green roofs of if that's in there, but definitely should be, and is definitely something that our office is looking into. Any other questions?
I had a question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was awesome presentation. I was wondering about worker protections with heat. I had kind of heard about like the Biden administration potentially introducing a rule to regulate heat protections in OSHA, but I just, yeah, don't know where that's at.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but um assuming that based on our current administration, it hasn't uh gone far. But there are some, I don't believe there's any state requirements, but I definitely would have to look into that more. So thanks for the question.
Thank you.
And then Anna, if I can get a time check.
Oh, yeah, sure. We have just a couple more minutes and then we'll switch over. But there is a question in the chat from Anya about how solar panels insulate or reflect heat, right? Of course, they're trying to absorb some heat, but are they
Mhm.
then? That's a good question. I'm curious too.
Well, that is a great question. I know that solar panels are something that we recommend as a cooling mechanism, especially like solar panel arrays over parking lots. It definitely provides shade from if they're, higher up kind of on an array. So it's something that we recommend. In terms of the actual mechanism, I'm not sure, but um, I assume that they reflect a portion of it and then they absorb a portion of it.
Or maybe they absorb, but they redirect because, right, the idea is that's the energy that's being produced. I mean, I don't really
Yeah.
understand how they work, but maybe
Yeah.
it's not getting absorbed into the roof. It's getting,
Yes, it's definitely not getting absorbed into the roof or the parking lot, whatever it's above.
mhm.
Awesome.
Ati.
Yeah, I had a question about your translations. I noticed Filipinos and Micronesians were targeted, but also, farmers like we have a lot of Southeast Asian, Laotian, Cambodian farmers that probably could use this type of information. Is there any effort to expand the translation list?
Yeah, we do have plans to potentially expand the list, and we're working with a group called the Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights, and they're developing a bunch of like heat safety PSA videos in 6 different languages, including Spanish and Tongan, I believe. So that's some expansion. And then in terms of why we picked these particular languages in our study, in our contract to kind of make these materials, they looked at some of the most at-risk neighborhoods, which, the Waianae coastline, Kalihi, and Waipahu, and looked at some of the most like frequently spoken languages there. So that's why we came up with these 4 languages, but I agree there definitely is a need for more, and we have the ability to do that. Awesome. Well, I think that I will leave it here, but if um anyone has any questions, you're welcome to contact me. Again, my email is down here and I'll put it in the chat. And yeah, I encourage you to kind of check out the materials a little more fully.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Yeah.
And if anyone has any follow-up questions, they can email you or um, is there contact information also on the website for Keep Cool Oahu? I guess it's in the, oh, there's a frequently asked questions sections on their website too, which is awesome. Okay, I have the slides up for Melvine. So I will get started and we have about 25 minutes.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to Anna for inviting me to join you all this morning. So I'm Melvin Kamba. I'm actually an occupational health nurse, and I'll be presenting on behalf of Hawaii Climate Change and Health Working Group, which we're excited to share with you a bit and dive into more about heat. Good question about if there's any protection for Hawaii. Hawaii is not, we don't have any laws that would protect workers, but we follow OSHA's guidelines. So next slide. I'm going to talk more about this later. This is the mission for Hawaii Climate Change Health Working Group. So united by the values of equity, justice, and aloha, the Hawaii Climate Change and Health Working Group collaborates across disciplines and communities to strengthen Hawaii's public health resiliency in response to our changing climate. So we're using a data-driven approach. Our mission is to research and communicate the human health impacts of climate change and advocate for policy solutions that prioritize our most at-risk community members. Next slide. And I know Claire did a wonderful job identifying who our vulnerable populations are. This one here is, it's a helpful pinwheel graphic to orient what we mean when we're talking about climate change and health. Sometimes when you think climate change, we think about polar bears. So no, as you can see, there are so many different health aspects of climate change, including extreme heat, wildfire risk of invasive vector diseases like mosquito disease, and the mental health impacts of a degrading environment. They are also interconnected, and for many of them, like Claire said, kupuna and our children are among the most vulnerable to these health impacts. So our mission here is to raise these awareness about these climate health impacts and organize and inspire healthcare professionals, more nurses to get more involved, because we're at the front line and seeing these impacts in our hospitals, in our ERs, in what I do at work. I work with agricultural farmers, and I see that happening. And we want to deliver and reach as much as people, especially those people who are feeling the impacts today. Next slide. Okay, so really briefly, here is some background on our group. We kicked off in June 2023, and at the time, James, who's the director of the Hi-Fi Climate Resiliency and Disaster Planning now, he was working in the Department of Health as their climate change and health coordinator, along with Elizabeth Kiefer and Dr. Diana Felton. They recognize the need for an organized group to bring healthcare professionals together to talk about these climate health impacts. So we meet every month. Sometimes we invite expert speakers like Claire to teach our members. Sometimes we provide updates from our different sub-working group. When we hit a year, we looked around and saw a great group of passionate healthcare professionals committed to do this work, but we were lacking the community voices. So next slide. So with that said, through a generous donation from Kaiser, we organized community listening sessions to hear about the climate health topics people are experiencing where they live, to learn how we can better steer our work to meet their needs. So far, we've held a listening session in Kapolei and in Waianae, where they are experiencing extreme heat, very dry in that area. Actually, I did my fellowship project there with Tristan. I think I see Tristan here on this call. And we're planning to do a second Waianae session early this summer on July 8th. We have a venue, and we are wanting to do a follow-up session with them. And the topics that came up included extreme heat, wildfire risk, including one-way in and out of evacuation route vulnerabilities, and water quality impacts due to cesspool runoff and storm events. So these sessions then informed our newly formed policy subgroup, which I'll explain shortly. So around this time, Hi-Fi became a fiscal sponsor, and we're in the process of pursuing different grant funding opportunities to help continue this work. Next slide. This is a photo of one of our listening sessions. This is Dr. Marcus Imwane, and he was able to, if you have not visited Kaiser West Oahu, I think someone had a question about building codes. Kaiser West Oahu, I think, is a certified as like a lead star where it's all energy efficient. So if you have a chance, please take a tour to that West Oahu. It's really incredible. And it has that benchmark of what building code should look like. But I'm not going to talk further more. I have only 25 minutes, but we could go on to the next slide. Okay, so we participated this year for the first time this legislative session to help bring the health perspectives into climate policy. So we trust our doctors and nurses with our personal health and the health of our family members. So our theory is that these trusted messengers are best suited to advocate for climate health solutions at the state level, as well as the federal level. This was a successful first year, and we were able to help the state pass the first in the country state declaration that climate change is a public health emergency. Through the process, legislators started using many of the terms on the climate health pinwheel during floor discussions, and we're pretty optimistic that policymakers have a stronger foundation to pass more climate health bills in future years. Next slide. Okay, we're just going to show this low-hanging fruit on our pinwheel is the heat, where the arrow is pointing. Everyone feels the heat, and it is one of the most obvious signs that our planet is warming, which can definitely affect our health. Next slide. We see this globally, so not locally, as temperatures rise in the summer. Next slide. And yes, locally, this is Waialae Avenue in Honolulu. You can just feel the heat. We just learned about the urban heat map, so Waialae is one of them. Next slide. And this one here, we know that the average annual temperatures have increased across Hawaii since 1950. Next slide. This is a chart of temperature measurements at the Honolulu airport over the last 75 years. The temperatures are statistically significantly higher, that is 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit, compared to 1950. So what this means is that if this is not the chance, this is not random fluctuation, this increase is real. Next slide. Again, about urban heat island, especially in the urban core, because of the urban heat island effect, this is not climate change, but a man-made problem that exacerbates increases in temperature due to concrete and asphalt absorbing and releasing heat day and night. So that's when we think about those building codes. Next slide. According to the community heat maps, the urban heat islands are located in red here, downtown. Also note Kapolei, but also rural areas of the west side too. And Waianae Coast is extremely hot. Next slide. And where do our poor and most vulnerable patients live? According to the Census of Persons Below Poverty, we see larger areas of poverty in the urban core and heat islands. So this is important for physicians and nurses to recognize when we assess our patients. We want to make sure, we want to include the environmental aspects, where they live, where the environment that they live and play and do these things. So maybe that's affecting their health. So that's something that we're working on. And who's vulnerable? Pregnant women and their babies. These babies cannot regulate temperatures on their own, our children. the elderly, those with chronic diseases, poorer people, those who live in urban heat islands, and the people who work outside. And next slide. So as healthcare professionals, of course, the medications that we prescribe our patients routinely can also cause vulnerability during a heat wave. So how does this happen? So if you take a diuretic or a blood pressure medicine, that can lead to dehydration, and that's on top of being dehydrated from experiencing from heat. So dehydration can impact the heart and the kidneys, and other medications impair the body's ability to sweat and cool down. So some of these medications could be psychiatric medications. So we want to make sure, we're looking at these medications, and that's going to be high risk for our vulnerable population. Next slide. We even see that heat itself has been associated with suicide. That's why we have included one of our group, the mental health group, within our climate health working organization. And who is at risk? Modifiers of this relationship include poverty and people on substance abuse. Environmental heat increases total body heat load, so the body has the appropriate thermal regulatory response. When your body core temperature rises, the vasodilation of the blood vessels redistributes blood flow towards the skin, which improves heat transfer from the core to the skin surface. So this helps remove heat from the body's core. And the other response to heat is sweating, right? Playing outside, we sweat, and when sweat evaporates, it carries heat away from your skin and lowers your body temperature. And there is conduction. Your body can lose heat through physical contact with another object or body. For example, when you sit in a metal chair, heat transfers from your body to the chair. This is the exacerbation of chronic diseases. So at each stage of the spectrum of heat-related illness, there is an exacerbation of chronic diseases which may not manifest for several days, as we see here, or we saw in the French heat wave, right? Least severe are heat cramps, rash, and edema due to the water and salt loss. This resolves with cooler clothing, a cooler environment, and elevating their legs. And heat syncope and heat exhaustion is a result of decreased cerebral perfusion due to fluid loss and vasodilation that results in a distributive hypovolemia. It occurs with a core temperature of less than 104. So most severe would be heat stroke. The cardiovascular strain due to both metabolic and thermoregulatory demands and reduced blood flow to your organs, such as your kidneys, can lead to heat stroke. And your central nervous system dysfunction and organ failure, which can be can be fatal. Next slide. Prevention and early recognition is key so that we can prevent progression to heat syncope and stroke. This is adaptation to climate change. We can have the patient lie down, apply cold compress. I usually apply them under their arms, at their core. Use a fan at a lower temperature, elevate their legs for increased circulation, and have victim drink fluids as long as they can tolerate fluids. Next slide. This one's kind of interesting because above 95 degrees, when the surrounding air is hotter than the skin surface temperature, blowing hot air over the body is actually harmful. And it's like cooking your skin, like a convection oven. So there's a loss of temperature gradient that drives convection heat loss. But here in Hawaii, if there's extra airflow across the skin from a fan, it helps sweat that would otherwise sit on the skin to evaporate. So that's a good thing, and it's a great thing. So we actually use resources from the resilience, the city and county climate resilience. And this is again kind of reinforcing that resources that we provide to our communities. And we'd like to, thank all these resources that we have here. There's so many resources. It's just a matter of bringing it out there. So as for me as a nurse, I use these resources whenever I do have employees coming in who are experiencing heat exhaustion. Hey, I hand them out, and that's an opportunity for me to do more of a patient education, reinforcing the preventative ways and also recognizing the symptoms of heat. And we've also, when my fellowship started last year, Tristan and I actually, she's a co-founder of Maui Farm. Sorry, Tristan, putting you on the spot. But when I did my project with her, she also incorporated these resources and taught her farmers and workers about recognizing the signs of heat and how to prevent that. So, same, yep, more resources. And I think Claire, you have this in translated resources, right? But someone asked about translation, so I thought that was a great idea.
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Yeah, so if anyone have any questions, please contact James, Liz, or myself. And that's our email.
Thank you so
And
much, Melvin.
You're
Just curious, is it possible for anyone to join the Climate Change and Health Working Group? Is it
yes,
open to everyone?
anyone. You don't have to be a healthcare professional at all. Anyone can join this group.
I've attended a few myself, and I think it's really great to see the expertise in the room, that kind of, coming together to actually address all the different health issues that are connected to climate change. And I like learning about that, but I also like being in there just to see how this network functions, because there's a lot to learn from. You guys are having a lot of success. You've put out an op-ed. You've even got the first declaration that you mentioned. It shows that networks can have impact when people are working across sector, across the state together to achieve a common goal. So it's a great working group to check out if you ever have the time.
Yeah, thank you, Anna.
Any questions for Melvin?
Yeah, Melvin, really great presentation. And I know you love trees as I do too. I am curious if the State Department of Health puts out any death data around heat related deaths, and whether there's any trend lines with that. And I do want to also concur the working group is really great in the idea of looking at climate change from a public health perspective is super smart and great. So, but do we have data about
For
heat-related
for
death?
for Hawaii alone, so Dan, I met you last year and I
Yeah.
started my fellowship. I had the hardest time finding data on this. There's good that's your answer. And I think that's one thing that's why we need to get this out there to our health professionals. I didn't even realize that water contaminants and waterborne illnesses are not required for providers to even record. So things like that, we need to make those changes. I think that's what's missing is data. So as healthcare professionals, if we do see patients coming in for heat exhaustion, there has to be a medical diagnosis that ties into it. So that way we can keep track. So the data is missing because I had the hardest time to find out how is, the data on patients related to heat exhaustion or deaths. Yeah, I had the hardest time. I see it in other states, but not in Hawaii. So something that we could work on. So thank you, Dan, for bringing that up. That's a good point. Anyone else have questions? I mean, I'm really excited that this group is starting a community garden and promoting that. That's wonderful. how can I be a part of this?
Well, you're welcome to continue to attend. We do have resources on our website, huimalai.org, right? About community gardens that we've supported in the past. We haven't been fundraising as much in this period, so there's less of that right now. More right now, we're focusing on the networking and the collaboration and just learning from each other. But I mean, there's a lot to be said also for using gardens and green space to reduce urban heat island effect. So it's all very
Yeah.
much related. Yeah.
Yeah, so Kaiser Westawall has their community gardens, but I'm looking at other healthcare organizations like Queens, Kapiolani. It would be great to start something off with that. So actually, we do have a nurses networking event. Anna, you may want to stop by and maybe present something for our
Sure.
nurses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Email me some more information. We can talk.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I have a question for you. Thank you so much for presenting. And I've had the privilege of jumping on a couple of meetings in the past too. Super awesome work that you folks are leading. And like really cool to see the intersection between the climate change and health group and this group. And just like I'm working on kind of figuring out where that connective tissue is between like another group that I'm part of, which is the Kupuna Collective, which is like around healthy aging and working to uplift Kupuna leaders. So I was kind of curious, maybe this goes to Anna and Claire too. If you folks see any opportunities to engage community partners for Kupuna Health specifically through that climate resilience lens, or if there's any opportunities for partnerships. Super interested in learning more.
I believe there's future partnerships, Lindsay. Actually, I am the Southwest Regional Forum organizer for Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environment. So there's 22 nurses in the South in Hawaii who have joined Annie, and we're in the beginning stage right now. And it's all about partnering with community base. So everything is community, and we're trying to break away from silo work. We want to build that capacity because for us to go in legislation and talk about and provide testimony, well, we need to learn what's the concern out there in the community, right? How are we going to get that? We see patients, but yet I think for me personally, the concern is out there in the community. So we need to be out there and partnering with community-based organizations who are already doing the work or who are experiencing this type of need. So what can nurses do? So give us something to do to help better our health outcomes. So we're going to be the face of that's our goal, right? We want to create this advocacy for our communities who are especially vulnerable. So I'm out there. I'm open to that. And because I'm teaching UH Manoa disaster planning, I could ask nursing students who want to take this project as their capstone. I think this will be a great opportunity for them too. So I'm all about teaching as well as learning for myself, but I don't want to be the only one. I want to be opened up to all these opportunities for others to experience as well.
Lots of overlap, lots of collaboration potential. I'm got the wheels turning, as I'm sure Lindsay does and some other folks do too. So thank you so much, Melvine. If there are no other questions for you, then I will pass it over to Leanne. Leanne, did you have any slides you wanted to share or just speak to?
Yes, I do. Just a few slides.
Okay, I'll make you a co-host.
Okay, let me know when. And then I'll work on.
There you are.
There. Oh, wait. Let me try again. Okay, there we go. Okay, I just have to get this set up. So, thank you all. Thank you, Anna, for giving us this opportunity to share about the Honolulu Community Gardens 50th anniversary that's coming up in September. I was very excited as the conversation during the last during Melvin's presentation kind of shifted over to community gardens and how it's so important for our food sustenance, but also now, to create more green space and cooling environments. The Honolulu Community Gardens is a city and county of Honolulu program. We will be celebrating our 50th anniversary on September the 13th. The event will be at Foster Botanical Garden from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and admission is free. Leonard Smotherman is co-chair of the event, and I'm going to be asking him to say a few words, starting with the third slide. And I see some community gardeners on the call, so thank you so much for being a part. Okay, so butterflies and sunflowers figure prominently in our branding, and our theme is keep growing, in the idea of we keep growing as individuals, keep growing in our garden skills and knowledge, and keep growing as a community, both in our individual gardens and as a program and with the larger Honolulu community. And so this is a brief flyer, brief information. So Leonard, do you want to jump in and talk about some of the activities? And then the next slide is about how you can help. Leonard. Okay, so we will have a whole section of Foster Botanical Garden with table space, and organizations can set up table displays and speak to gardeners or the public as they come into the event. And so Leonard has the list of participating organizations and if there's any more space.
Okay, and I'm sorry, it took me a while to figure out my phone on how to push the unmuted button, so I apologize for that.
Okay, well, I just did a lead in, so can you see this slide? And I was just talking.
Yeah, I can see it. It's the size of a forever stamp from the post office. So I'll just say that we have plenty of room for organizations like this. If anyone wants to have a table or booth to kind of highlight what you're doing and what you have, we want anything garden, agricultural, heat, community related. We're happy to invite you to come take part. We will have a big tent set to one side for things like this. So if somebody wants to come and you have a setup and then you want to leave it sitting there for people to enjoy while you walk around, that's no problem. So although it's nice to have it manned, please don't feel like you're going to be tethered to that. We will have all the gardens will be in a little bit separate area. And then food trucks and information will be very near to where we would get you to set up. So saying all that, if you had any questions, I can field questions.
Yeah. And so we're inviting you to participate by setting up an educational table. Leonard, do you want to say anything about volunteers? Are there any particular areas where we could use some volunteer help?
If people want to jump in particular, outside of your booth, we just want to monitor the parking. And then we're going to be tapping into some of the high school groups to help around the grounds. But my understanding is they can't do the parking. So we'll need some adults to help on shifts on parking. So if you could go for half hour, hour and a half at a time to just go kind of watch cars over at the United Methodist Church, which if you're not familiar, that's across the street from Foster Garden. So they've been kind enough to let us use their parking lot. They just want to have it monitored is all.
Yes, and we will be asking any volunteer to be helping with wayfinding. We're expecting hundreds of people. We're hoping for hundreds of people. And so if you see somebody a little bit, not knowing where to go, if you can at least assist them and bring them to one of the community garden tents. We will be having a special meeting for volunteers on the Saturday before, that's September the 6th at 1 p.m. And we'll go over more procedure and layout. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Leonard?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And we can always use more donations. Your organization will receive an acknowledgement in any publicity. And speaking about publicity, we could sure use some help in putting out the word. So the previous slide was like a hard paper flyer. I'll send to Anna. If you have an e-newsletter, it could be formatted for that, but especially with social media. If you have personal social media or organizational social media, we will be having a toolkit. And if you could help us put out the word, that would be very much appreciated. And so, thank you so much. Do you have any questions?
If folks do want to get involved with the tabling, should they email you directly, Leonard? Can I put your email in the chat?
Yeah, that'd be fine. They're welcome to email me, and I'll make sure they've got a spot.
Great.
And then I see a question from Rufino about getting a link to the flyer. I will, in my follow-up email, send out a PDF or image of the flyer that you have. So, Leanne, if you can send me the most up-to-date one, I can get that out there.
Sure. And I understand that e-newsletters for different organizations will have different timetables through the summer. So, wherever you can fit us in over the next couple of months in advance of the September 13th event.
All right, I put Leonard's email in the chat. So folks who want more information about tabling, you can contact directly. And if people want to make a donation, how do they do that?
Leonard. He's our treasurer as well. He's that guy.
Yeah, I'd like to claim it. Well, I'd like to be clear that there's no donations required. So to have a booth, you're welcome to come have a booth. If you want to donate to help offset the costs for volunteer lunches, t-shirts, and such as that, then we welcome it. You can, if you want to do it by check, it'd be a check made out to Honolulu Community Garden Council. And then you can send it to the address of Foster Garden, and Cater Anna will make sure it finds its way to me, and I'll get it deposited.
So we'll send that information to you, Anna, as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Leonard.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes.
I'll share my screen one more time here, just to mention some other upcoming events, and then I'll open the floor to other announcements. But as always, there's a lot of Master Gardener activities, and these ones are specific to Oahu, but the website is there if you're interested in the other island Master Gardener programs. They're always tabling at KCC. If you have plants that need some doctoring, you can bring them, or you can bring pictures. The Halava Xeriscape Garden will have their plant sale on August 2nd, and then they have their second Saturday in September on the 13th. And then I also had this flyer to share out with you all about participating in an academy. This could be for kids, I think, and for adults, but it does provide opportunity for credit. And then for those who want to be involved in Hui Māla or just attend these meetings and be on the email list, another way we describe that as being a member. And you can do that by filling out our membership form. It's also a baseline survey, so we get kind of an idea of who's participating. And then hopefully in some time we can come back and do another survey and be able to measure change as a network, or if we have more gardens out there in the world as a result, who knows? That would be great to see. So please fill out that baseline survey. We have our website. This will all be in available. I will send these slides over in a follow-up email. Um, I also have a list of funding opportunities that I continue to populate whenever I see funding opportunities arise for food gardens, for food forests, for planting, for accessibility, whatever it may be that's somehow related to the work that we do. I um I do some research every couple of weeks and I'll just keep that spreadsheet mostly up to date. But of course, I can't see everything. So if you even hear of opportunities, let me know and I can add them to the spreadsheet. We also have a resource folder, although most of what's in the resource folder is now being put on our website, and that's primarily the recording of every call that we have. And then the next convening will also be on Zoom. It's mid to late July. Stay tuned for that information. If you want to receive, so this is another reason why it's important to fill out the survey, because it's like the membership form. You can also find that on our website. It's a way to stay updated on all of our convening information. Right. This month I sent it as like a registration link rather than sending the Zoom. I did end up doing that in the end just to make sure I didn't miss anybody, but we're going to talk about how we want to do it best next time. So if you're on the email list, you'll know you'll get it. Awesome. All right. Any other updates? Anything that is relevant to the work of green space, of heat-related illness, of food gardens, of gardening, lake garden, whatever it may be that feels important for this network to know, events, asks, opportunities, whatever you might have, feel free. This is the time.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Paul Arinaga from Grow Good Hawaii. I just wanted to share that we recently launched a community portal. It's more focused on native plants and canoe plants, but people can go there, register. There are forums where they can share plant knowledge, find like-minded people to connect with. And then as part of that portal, we also have a web app that's actually a filterable database of 216 native Hawaiian and canoe plants. So people can go there and filter based on various landscaping attributes, horticultural attributes. And also we've also added like ethnobotanical information. So if people want to find out which plants are good for lei making, for example, they can do that. And then we've also added environmental information. So people can find out which plants are good habitat for certain forest birds and that kind of thing. And and then the last feature we included is an interactive map, so people can put in their their address or drop a pin, and then their growing zone or climate zone is automatically located or generated for them. Because previously people who used the maps in our book, which were not bad, but it was, people, especially people between zones, were not able to be as precise. So that feature hopefully will make life easier for people. And I should mention, thanks, Anna. I should mention that's our book. So we've taken basically what we call the quick reference table out of that book, and there are the climate zones. And we made it into a filterable database, which should be much easier to use. So you can find all this information, and I'll put it in the chat, and register at gonativeplants.org. So it's gonativeplants.org, but I'll put it in the chat. Hope you'll all sign up, because the more the merrier, right? The more people who use this and share information. Hui Māla, case in point, right? The larger the community, the more value to everyone. So would appreciate your checking it out. Thank you, and thanks, Anna.
Yeah, of course. Paul, if you can send me or email me like a quick blurb about it, then I can include it in my follow-up email.
Oh, okay, sure. Thanks a lot.
It's really cool. There are all kinds of haphazard like community groups on Facebook, for example, or where people are sharing information. And this is just a way to like use technology to our advantage and perfect for plant sharing and plant knowledge. And it's really cool. I'm excited to use it.
Yeah, actually, maybe I could add briefly. Part of what we're hoping to eventually is to have like all those cool groups on Facebook are great, but in my opinion, it's a little bit hard to like there are no threads on specific topics, you know. So we're trying to figure a way to improve on that situation if we can. But we need more. We need a lot of content, of course. So that's where you all come in. Mahalo.
Any other updates? If there are no other updates or asks at this point in time, then no need to linger in Zoom land. We can get some of time of our Friday back. So just another scan around. Nobody else has anything to use just to mention this time? No? Great. Well, I will stay on. I'm happy to be here until 10:30. So if you have to go, then understandable. And thank you so, so much for being here. We'll stay tuned for the next one. Thanks, Alice.
Thanks, Anna. That was wonderful. Can I share you the flyers for like our next listening session?
Yes, and I can add that in the email as well.
Okay. And then the nursing event as well.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm actually going to stop recording now that we've come to an end.